All right, and welcome in everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome freaking day. My name is Garrett Shumake, and you are listening to the Shumake Take, and welcome in to Predictions versus Reality. The start of the offseason program is here, and we are going to be starting with Predictions versus Reality, reflecting on every single NFL team right before free agency and the NFL new league year begins. For those of you that do know what's happening and know about my predictions versus reality content, you can go ahead and move on to the next timestamp below. But if you are new here, which by the way, welcome, or if you weren't in on the prediction versus reality conversation, let me tell you what prediction versus reality is all about. So predictions versus reality, which I will start calling PVR, is a reflective off-season series. It will kick off every off-season on the Shumake Take, where I go back and I look at my schedule predictions that I made back in August for every team. Look at where I thought they would finish, where they actually finished, and we'll talk about some important details about their year, like their best wins, where their offense and defense finished. Go into their stat leaders of major categories: passing, rushing, receiving, tackles, sacks, interceptions, the major ones. And then we'll look at, why I had them going the record I had them predicted at the time back in August. And then we'll look at what happened, what went right, what went wrong, depending on where the team, depending on where the projection and the final record, where they started, where they finished. And then we'll look at, what now? What will this team do to get better? And you're looking at the number green. The number green. Yes, the number green, guys. Oh my God, that's that's awesome. But anyways, if you guys watch the Chicago Bears video, which I suggest you go watch right here after this one, I mentioned that we are going from the NFC North, fourth, third, second, first place, then south, east, west, in the same order. So if you were following along, that means we are talking today about the Cheeseheads, the Green Bay Packers. I wanted to wear a yellow shirt for the Green Bay Packers, but I do not have any yellow shirts. So we are sticking with green. My apologies. My allergies are starting to bother me right now. So we'll try and manage that as we go. So going back in August, for the Green Bay Packers, I projected them to go 11-6. They finished 11-6. Fun fact, this team was one of three teams I 100% predicted where their record was going to finish, which for me, that's pretty cool. That's not bad at all. I called it. But let's go into actual predictions versus reality here. Enough boasting, let's actually go into it. So for the Packers, to me, they had three really good wins. Their best wins were at Seattle late in the year. They won 30-13. They beat the New Orleans Saints 34-0 in what was their most dominant win. And then they went into LA to face the Rams and beat them 24-19, which was a playoff team. And this was later in the year too, I believe. So honestly, a very good set of three wins on this slate. Offensively and defensively, both finished fifth. So you got a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense, which reflects on their record. Stat leaders: Jordan Love, of course, was the leading passer, 63% completion percentage, 3,389 yards, 25 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. So Jordan Love, overall, I thought he had a good year. But with Jordan Love, he was inconsistent at times. There was times earlier in the year where he was making terrible decisions with the football. And this was something I was worried about when Jordan Love was given the big contract that he got before this year started. And quite frankly, I'm not knocking the guy. I like the guy. He does not deserve the contract that he got. And this year reaffirmed that for me. While there's no doubting it, I didn't read that right. My bad. He was good this year. There is no doubting that. We're actually going to get it right here. He did not look like the second half of 2023 where he looked like an outbridged, middling top 10 quarterback that people were hyped up about. He did not look like that guy at all. And in a situation where he had a top 10 offensive line, He had a really good running game, a solid group of wide receivers. I would expect a quarterback to do more in that situation. I would expect a quarterback in that moment to be better. But there was multiple times where he was struggling. He was missing easy throws. And like I mentioned, really scary, boneheaded decisions. Although I will say, to Jordan Love's credit, that got better as the year went on. A lot of those turnover-worthy, boneheaded plays got better. A lot of that was due to the fact that he got hurt in week 1. Malik Willis had to play for a couple of games. So coming back, there was a lot of rust that he had to shake off, right? And it was also earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, he got hurt in week 1 at the end of the game, near the end of the game. So, I mean, it makes sense why his 2024 really didn't start until after 25% of the season was gone. So, part of it is understandable. I get it. But that being said, the decisions were made. So, in the year overall was not where people thought he would be. So, that deserves, to get noticed. That deserves to be said, right? But overall, he did underwhelm from a lot of people's expectations. And he wasn't the reason he lost, the Packers lost games. He was not the reason. But at the same time, he wasn't the reason they won a ton of games either. He was just kind of there, doing his thing and riding the ship. And that's not bad. It's not bad, but when you're paid like one of the highest paid quarterbacks, that's not going to cut it. If you're going to be paid like a top 5 quarterback, you need to play like a top 5 quarterback. And he did not play like a top 5 quarterback. He played like an above average quarterback. That's it. That's how he played. And it's not all Love's fault, though. It's not all Jordan Love's fault. Right? Because the other issue that this offense had was that they didn't have a true wide receiver 1. They got away with it in 2023, and it's something that someone needed to step up in 2024, and no one did, and it hampered the offense and its ability to take constant deep shots and capitalize off of a great running game that Josh Jacobs brought to them, who we'll talk about in a minute. But continuing on with the statistics, right? Josh Jacobs, as I just mentioned, 301 carries, 1,329 yards, which was 6th in the NFL, 15 rushing touchdowns, fourth in the NFL, technically tied for second. The 3 other guys above him were all tied for first. But 4.4 yards per carry, he was phenomenal. Obviously, the year where he led the league in rushing in Las Vegas was better, but this year he really elevated this Packers offense. Maybe not just elevated, he completed this offense. This offense last year in 2023 for the Packers, what they were missing was that elite running back. Aaron Jones was hurt, inconsistent. A.J. Dillon was good, but not great. They needed to pay a good running back to come in and really just be a solid workhorse for them. And they got that and many more with Josh Jacobs. And Emmanuel Wilson, the guy behind him, he had 103 carries, 502 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4.9 yards a carry. I thought he was a very solid complementary back to Josh Jacobs. Emmanuel Wilson's faster. He's a bit more of a speed guy, receiving guy. So honestly, overall, I thought he played pretty darn well as a backup running back. And when you pair those two guys with a good offensive line, you're going to get a football team that was top 5 in rushing offense. I think they were top 3 to be specific. So that's a good formula for success, and that's the formula that the Packers won 11 games with. And it's not a bad offense, or not a bad thing to run with. A lot of offenses won games this year, with running the football. The running game has made a huge renaissance this year, and Josh Jacobs and the Green Bay Packers are one of the biggest, examples of that happening. So a shout out to Josh Jacobs. We'll talk a little bit more about him later on, but he had a fantastic year. Receiving wise, Jaden Reed was their leading receiver. Only 55 catches, 857 yards, 6 touchdowns. When I talked about receivers being, there's got to be a receiver that stepped up and became the wide receiver 1 of this team, I thought that Jaden Reed would be that guy. He looked really good in the first game of the year against Philly, that game in Brazil, and I thought, okay, here we go. Like, Jaden Reed, he's going to be the guy that's going to step up, and he didn't step up. He did not step up. He had games where he just wasn't good. He had good games, and he had really bad games, and You look at, the second guy, Tucker Kraft, 50 catches, 707 yards, 7 touchdowns. He played really well. Tucker Kraft played like a bottom, like a top, like just outside the top 10 of a tight end. He became a very solid security blanket for Jordan Love. And honestly, in a way, he was the most consistent. I'm pretty sure he caught, his catch to target ratio was the highest out of all receivers in Green Bay, I'm pretty sure. So that also goes for him. But Tucker Kraft had a very, very, very good year for tight end standards. I mean, yeah, I'm going there. I'm kind of like talking myself into a wall here. But he overall had a very solid year. And then Christian Watson, 29 catches, 620 yards, 2 touchdowns. He really became like that big deep shot guy for the Green Bay Packers. But 29 catches clearly shows that he did not do enough as a complete receiver. He was a second-round pick, high second-round pick, 34th overall, if I remember correctly. So, obviously, that type of production, it's either boom or bust. And we've seen some boom, and we've seen a lot of bust. There's not a lot of consistent, like, just good middling play right there. And then Romeo Doubs, 46 catches. He had 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. He got hurt at some points during the year, too, I think. But overall, I mean, he was okay. He was fine. And then Dontavian Wicks, 39 catches, 415 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was also fine. But overall, in the receiving game, you know what? Just give me a second. I got to blow my nose. I'm so sorry. It's starting to run, and I don't want to do that on camera. I apologize. Okay, and we are back. Sorry about that. I just wanted to take care of that real quick. Just, obviously, like, a runny nose just doesn't look good on camera. It's disgusting. So I just got off and decided to blow my nose real quick and come right back. So we talked about the receivers. Let's shift to the defensive side of the football. Tackles. Quay Walker led the team with 102 tackles. Overall, he had a really good year, I thought. He was definitely one of the highlights of this resurged Packers defense. And along with him, Isaiah McDuffie finished with 997. Very solid year for the linebacker. And then Javon Bullard, the rookie safety out of Georgia, had 90 tackles. Javon Bullard was one of the big surprises of this defense. We'll talk a little bit more about the draft class here in just a moment. But Javon Bullard was one of those guys that stepped up and was a big-time contributor as a rookie. And that's really good stuff. That's really good stuff. You cannot talk about the resurgence of the Packers defense without talking about Javon Bullard and how well that he played. And then on the defensive line, they were a very solid unit. And Rashawn Gary led the team with 7.5 sacks. He's a good player. Devontae Wyatt, he emerged out, had 5 sacks, and then Kingsley and Agbear had 4.5. Their numbers, they didn't have a lot of, no pass rusher really, was fantastic per se, but they were, in the upper half of the league in sacks. They were really good at getting after the quarterback, if my memory serves me right. I'm hoping I'm not wrong when I say that, but my memory serves me from watching the Packers that their pass rush was pretty good. And then their interceptions, Xavier McKinney had 8 of them, which is second in the NFL. I don't remember if he was a first-team All-Pro or second-team All-Pro. Was he? I feel like I would have wrote it down if he was a first-team All-Pro. Either way, it was an All-Pro level of a year. Xavier McKinney came from New York. He was one of the not really a veteran, but he was one of the free agency moves that the Packers, made. And he came in and provided an immediate impact. And him and Javon Bullard, going into the future, wow. That's a great safety duo to look forward to in that time. And then Jair Alexander and Carrington Valentine, their 2 starting corners, they finished with 2. Not much past that, honestly. But it really didn't matter because the Packers defense was really good. But initially, despite everything that happened good for the Packers, why did they have them going 11-6 in the first place? Because the 11-6 Packers that we saw this year was not the 11-6 Packers that I thought was going to be going into 2024. When I saw a lot of people pick Green Bay to become a true Super Bowl contender, I simply did not buy it. I was another one of those teams where it's like, hold on a minute, why are we expecting the Packers to become a Super Bowl contender? Why? Jordan Love, he played great in the second half of 2023, like I mentioned, but unlike most people, I did not forget how bad he was at the first half of 2023. He was really bad. People forget about that. People were calling him one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL at the beginning of the year. If you guys remember, if you guys go back, people were absolutely dogging on Jordan Love, if you guys remember. I didn't forget that. And everyone else kind of seemingly forgot about it, but I was like, hold on a minute. You cannot have half of a season where you're good and expect me to buy into it. I will never buy into it. Even if the first half of the year you were mid and the second half you were absolutely like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm not going to buy into it. I do not buy into this. I don't buy into some of this and some of this. No, I'm going to buy into if you give me the most of the time a lot of this. If you can give me a lot of this and very little of this, then I will buy into you. But if you have a significant number of both, I can't buy into that. That screams inconsistency, and I don't believe in inconsistency. I believe in consistency. That is where a good player becomes a great player. You can be a good player, but if you're inconsistent, you cannot be great. I'm sorry, you can't. With that being said, along with the Packers defense, they were not good in 2023. And at the time, I did not expect them to make the jump that they ended up making. I thought they would be better, but I did not expect them to, be like significantly changed at the time. So I was like, that's going to hold them back a little bit. This defense is going to have some struggles, right? And then add on, they did not have a bona fide wide receiver one. And we already talked about a little bit as to why, that didn't happen and how disappointing it was. But what I saw was not a Super Bowl contender ultimately. What I saw was another Packers playoff team that had deficiencies that would hold them back. And in a way, even though they had a good year and a better year than what I thought they would actually be, like the 11-6 Packers now are better than what I thought the 11-6 Packers would be going into the year. That being said, we'll talk about it a little bit more. A lot of those deficiencies that I mentioned did come back to haunt them in a big way. But what happened? What happened with this Packers team? Why did they finish 11-6, and how did it happen? I already mentioned Josh Jacobs plenty, but this man literally carried the offense. He carried the offense on his back a lot this year. And he showed how valuable he could really be with a good team like his fellow running backs that went to new teams, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. I mentioned this. They're redefining the importance of the running back position and what it can do to help your quarterback. You can go get cheap running backs, draft running backs on day 3 and get good production running the football. But simply put, what this year proved was that if you want your offense to be top tier, if you want a top tier offense, you need to have an elite running back. And what an elite running back does is make your quarterback, the numbers will go down, and it's still a passing league, but your quarterback needs to be efficient. And an elite running back makes your quarterback look so much more efficient. It takes so much weight off, and it's not all on the quarterback. You don't need a great quarterback, top tier quarterback, to win a Super Bowl. If you have a quarterback that's good, athletic, right, can make big plays when they need to make big plays, but also just play efficient, consistent, and not turn the ball over. Look at Jalen Hurts and their Super Bowl run. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Jalen Hurts didn't play particularly, he didn't have the year that he had in 2022 where I thought he should have won MVP over Lamar Jackson. But at the same, what was it, 2022 where Lamar Jackson won it? No, it was someone else that won it. Was that Mahomes that year? I can't remember. Either way, he was second place. He should have won MVP that year outright. So it wasn't that good of a year, but you look at Jalen Hurts and his efficiency numbers, they were great. They were great. And that is because he had the best running game that he's ever had in his career to this point. Even better than 2022, even better than 2023. 2024 was objectively the best year the Eagles had running the football in a long time compared to everything else. So you look at his efficiency numbers go up. That's what I'm talking about with this running back renaissance. You need an elite running back to take your offense over the top. And Josh Jacobs, going back to the Packers here, he was one of those guys that really drove this narrative home. You cannot talk about the 2024 Packers without mentioning Josh Jacobs. He was simply fantastic. And to see him go from the dysfunctional Raiders team, go to a good one and play well, it makes me so happy for the guy. He genuinely deserves to win a Super Bowl, and I hope that he does with Green Bay because he is a great player. He's a phenomenal dude. He is one of those guys that you cannot not root for that guy. You cannot not root for him. I am rooting for Josh Jacobs all the way until the day he retires He's a great player, and to see him go to a good team and have a great year, absolutely just, how can you not feel excited and happy for the guy? Moving on, though, the second thing that actually, that happened that made the Packers finish where they finished was that this defense, I teased it, they made an overnight jump. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They are word it. They had an overnight jump. Their total defense jumped from 17th in 2023 to 5th. Pass defense, right? It stayed roughly the same. It was a slight dip, just outside the top 10, in that above average tier, right? But their run defense, they finished 5th in the NFL. That is where their defense really shined this year. Incredible run defense, which in 2023, that was the worst part of their defense. They ranked 28th in that regard. Do you guys remember how bad their defense was against the run in 2023? They were so freaking bad that their defense was actively losing them games. They were actively responsible and one of the biggest culprits as to why the Packers lost games. Even though they made the playoffs, they lost a lot of games, especially early on, because of their bad run defense. So to see that number jump from being one of the worst to one of the best, that's incredible. And also, third down defense made a big jump. They were 25th in 2023, jumped to 12th, which is a huge jump. The major issues of this unit a year ago were among some of their best traits this year in 2024, which the new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, you deserve a ton of credit. My friend, you deserve a ton of credit. A lot of people were unsure about Jeff Hafley because he was the head coach at Boston College, and, their defense was not particularly good under his time there, so it was a little bit of a odd thing, but like we've seen some other defensive coordinators in recent years that were in college and immediately made a jump to the pros, right? They've had some success, and he was one of those guys that you look at that as an example of. Jeff Hafley, he got a lot of, he was known as a secondary guy, but seeing what they were able to do in the defensive line in the front seven was nothing but incredible. And it's also, when Jair Alexander went down, he's their best corner, right? And behind him, there's not very many, the corners are all right. They're not great, they're just all right. And when Jair Alexander went down, right, how the secondary played throughout the rest of the year without him was phenomenal. He got the most out of all of those guys, despite Alexander's injury, which he also deserves a lot of credit for that, right? And it's also important to note that he has been in the NFL for a long time. This is not even close to being his first stint, right? Jeff Hafley made this defense one of the league's best, though. He turned them around overnight, and with all the young talent on that side of the ball, the future looks so bright for the Packers defense. I expect this unit to be really good next year. There's no doubting it. They don't have a lot of free agents that need to be paid. They have a bunch of young talent. That's the key. If you want a great defense for a long time, you got to draft well and get a lot of young talent, and the Packers defense has just that. Their free agency was also successful, which is another reason why the Packers finished how they finished. I mentioned Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, right? They re-signed a lot of depth players, which helped when players got hurt, right? When players got hurt, production did not significantly dip at all at a major spot. So when you see that, that means you have good depth, right? And along with that, their free agency overall, it was good. Honestly, I have a lot of, in my script here, I have a lot of stuff talking about Xavier McKinney, but Xavier McKinney, he was an all-pro level player this year. And I talked about here how, he gave the secondary a huge boost, helped out the corners, and he's proving why top safety play deserves big money. Safety is one of those positions that really isn't valued as much anymore compared to corner, but kind of like running, but an elite running back, if you have an elite safety on the back end, it makes a huge significant difference compared to if you just have your average starting safety. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And you get a guy like Xavier McKinney, and like I mentioned, he was a big boost for the secondary and really gave them help where they really needed help. And along with that, the draft was very, very promising. This was a very good draft for the Packers in year one. First round pick, Jordan Morgan, he was looking pretty good. He did get hurt in the final third-ish of the year, but overall, I mean, he was playing very solid. Got a lot of production, wasn't bad by any means. No, not at all. Like, he didn't have a lot of great top-tier performances, but he was not bad by any means. Very solid, very consistent, and for a rookie offensive lineman, that's what you want to see. That stuff right there, like you see a lot of offensive linemen, especially tackles, they're bad. Jordan Morgan wasn't a tackle. I think he went into guard, I think. He shuffled into guard. But either way, you expect rookie offensive linemen to go through some learning, some growing pains, and he did, right? But he never had that game where he was egregiously bad. And that's a testament to the Packers coaching. They always have great coaching. But that wasn't just him. Second round pick, Adrian Cooper and Javon Bullard, both of these guys played really well. And quite frankly, Adrian Cooper played really well. Javon Bullard played really well. These two guys could realistically, within 1 or 2 years, be two of the best players on this defense. They are very talented. They played out of their minds. They had really good games. And then fifth round pick, Evan Williams. He was also a big contributor. The fourth round pick, Marshawn Lloyd. He did not play, but I am still very high on his talent. Very powerful guy. I thought he could pair really well with Josh Jacobs. This is why I like the pick. And also, A.J. Dillon, he got hurt. He was done for the year, which allowed Emmanuel Wilson to step up and be the running back too. I don't think A.J. Dillon's going to return. So Marshawn Lloyd's going to be competing with Emmanuel Wilson for running back too. And even then, no matter who's 2 or who's 3, I think with Jacobs, Wilson, and Lloyd, I think that's a great running back trio right there. I think that's a solid group. And adding Marshawn Lloyd to the mix with how good Josh Jacobs was, man, how good as a compliment Emmanuel Wilson was. You get Marshawn Lloyd, who's a young back who runs with a ton of fierceness and power. Oh, man, like you're looking like on paper, like, Emmanuel Wilson, like he's like your third down speedy back. But if Marshawn Lloyd can reach his potential with Josh Jacobs, and you have these two monsters, beast of players that will just hit you where it hurts, that's a deadly combination at its peak. So I'm excited for Marshawn Lloyd. The rest of the draft was fantastic, and they are a big testament as to why the Packers were so good this year, especially on defense. And that being said, what does this team now? How does this team need to get better? I teased it before, but this team needs a true wide receiver one. Whether they, go get it one in free agency like T. Higgins, for example, or they draft someone in the first round, right, or second round, right? They need to get a bona fide number one receiver. Davante Adams will be a free agent, so maybe you bring him back. He's expressed interest. I would like that move. Not only would you be getting a good wide receiver and get a wide receiver one that you need, you get a guy that's been with the Packers, right? Good culture guy, good locker room guy, but also he's a veteran. He's a veteran. A lot of these receivers for Green Bay, or all these receivers for Green Bay, are young. The oldest guy is like 25, turning 26. I don't remember who it is, but that's like the oldest guy in this receiving room. Davante Adams is like almost 30. So you get a veteran guy in here. That's going to elevate. If they bring in Davante Adams, he's going to elevate this receiving room more than people think it will. He's going to really elevate this receiving room in ways that people are not expecting. So there is that. Along with that, they also really need to add a solid corner to pair with Jair Alexander. This could be a bigger need than anticipated because after the playoff loss to Philly, he made some very questionable non-committal comments regarding the team after that loss. So this is something that Green Bay needs to tread very intentionally and methodically, because while it's easy to get aggressive because, Jair Alexander could be leaving, we need to pay top dollar for another corner, or we need to draft a corner in the first round and fix this. Oh no, it's like, no, you don't need to be hasty with this. Just take your time. Jair Alexander is probably not going to go anywhere. The Packers roster is in a great place, right? So there's no need to haste that. But I feel like if you add a good quality corner to pair up with Jair Alexander, assuming that he stays, which I think he will, you add a good wide receiver one, right? In my opinion, I think they're more than likely going to sign a veteran like Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Chris Godwin could be an option, right? One of those guys at the top. Outside of that, this Packers roster is, like I mentioned, is in a good place. Is in a really good place. And maybe, they could add some depth at, offensive line. They could, add more depth at edge. Maybe they could draft another edge. I would anticipate them drafting an edge on day 3, maybe day 2 if there's a guy that they really like, right? You can never have too many good edge rushers. So there is that. Maybe they draft another defensive tackle to pair with Kenny Clark. They do have a defensive tackle. I can't remember his name. He played well next to Kenny Clark. But that being said, if Jordan Love can step it up, if Jordan Love can really step up and become that quarterback that we saw in the second half of 2023, that's just explosive, very clean, very good decision maker, right? Great arm talent, can do everything you need him to do, can run around and extend plays. If Jordan Love can get to that type of level in 2025, I will entertain a potential Super Bowl for the Green Bay Packers. But a lot of it's gonna lean on Jordan Love's shoulders. Even if he doesn't have that type of a year and that type of explosive playmaking, if he can just have if he can have a Jalen Hurts type of year, this Packers team could go to the Super Bowl. There is a real chance and real scenario where that happens. But for now, I am going to keep it safe. I will say this team will definitely be in the playoffs next year. Barring something crazy happening, this team will be in the playoffs next year. How far they go will be, that'll be determined when we get to it. But that's a whole year plus. That's a little bit less than a year away from now. So we got many, many months to talk about where I think the Packers will actually end up. But compared to the Chicago Bears, the Packers, they're going to this offseason with a lot of hype and a lot of optimism. With that being said, that is going to do it for me today, guys. Make sure you guys let me know your thoughts in the comments down below about all this topics, talking about the Packers, where I was right, where you think I was wrong, and everything in between, even if you just want to say hi. Also, make sure you guys hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Hitting these 2 buttons only takes a couple of seconds, but it helps the channel out so much in helping me spread my passion for the NFL and for football to more people on this platform. Along with that, making sure you guys share the video, whether you're on social media or spread it by word of mouth. Either way works. Getting more people locked on to the Shumake Take podcast, coming out with great content for you guys every single week. Reminder, we are going 4th to 1st in every division, north, south, east, west. So you guys will be seeing the Vikings. You guys will be seeing the Lions. You will be seeing the Saints, the Falcons, the Bucks, the Panthers. So if you are fans of these teams, or you are listening, or you are a Packers fan listening to this, and you have a friend or a family member that is a fan of these teams, let them know that Garrett Shumake, the Shumake Take, will be dropping video of predictions versus reality video talking about their team this week. This is going to be great. I'm so excited to continue making these videos for you guys. That is going to do it for me today, guys, though. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.